What is up, my crafty friends? My name is Carrie, and I want to thank you for tuning in today. Whether it's your first visit to my channel or you're a returning subscriber, I want to say welcome, my friend. I can't wait to see what everybody has made for us in this Nail That Are Failed It challenge. And if you missed the open invite, I'll be sure to put a link right up above in case you want to join us too, because I promise y'all it is not too late. So a couple of weeks ago, Keisha over at Sweet Urban Rose and myself challenged y'all to join us for this Nail That Are Failed It challenge. The theme for the challenge is high-end fall decor. We ask y'all to scour your favorite stores and also the internet and find something for fall decor that was very expensive and dupe it for less. And at the end of the video, you get to ask your audience if you nailed it or failed it. After you get through watching my video, be sure to watch everybody else's videos in the playlist, and to make it easy, all you've got to do is to hit loop on the playlist and everybody's videos will just play one right after the other. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a big thumbs up because that would mean the world to me. And if you're not already subscribed to my channel, consider hitting that subscribe button down below. And if you don't want to miss anything I've got coming your way, you might want to turn on all those notifications. For my dupe, I found a gorgeous fall harvest box on potterybarn.com, and y'all, this thing was $161. Like, that is just way too much money for something that I can dupe myself. So I took Dollar Tree items and I'm gonna make it for less than 20. If you want to see how I dupe this fall harvest arrangement, keep watching this video, and if you like it, be sure to give it a big thumbs up. Don't forget to let me know down in the comments below if I nailed it or failed it. So that's enough talking, y'all. Let's start DIYing. Okay, let's take a look at what we're going to be using from the Dollar Tree today. So I've got some wood grain contact paper. I've got a couple of the Beware signs. You can use the white ones or the black ones. I've got 2 of the 6x6 seasonal signs. I've got a couple of blocks of our foam for our flower arrangements. I've got some fall leaves. I've also got the fall berries. I've got 1 bunch of white dahlias. I've got 1 green and orange styrofoam pumpkin, a package of thumbtacks, and also 1 piece of foam core. Okay, the first thing I'm going to start off with for our project is going to be our little sign. Now, Dollar Tree has these for all of the season, Valentine's Day, Christmas, whatever. And they're always 6x6 inch square. So if you don't have this particular one, no worries. Just grab any that you can find that are 6x6 inch square. The first thing I want to do is just to pop this little hanger off, and these are great, so hang on to this because we can use it for another project. Now, this next part, honestly, there's really no easy way to do it, so just be prepared to get a little bit messy. So I'm going to remove this paper. I've just got a spray bottle with some water. You don't want to let the water stay on too terribly long, but you do want to let it soak in. Okay, so the first layer is off, and now I'm just going to take a little bit more of my water and spray it. And now I'm just going to take a washcloth. This comes off pretty fast, the second layer. Okay, so now I've got all of that sticky stuff off of my sign. Now, I know some people do use maybe Goo Gone or something like that to get that off. I'm not using Goo Gone because I'm afraid my contact paper won't stick to this when I get ready for it. Before I set it to the side to dry, I'm going to take my 80 grit sandpaper and I just want to rough up the front and one side of my sign. Okay, so there's our sign. So I'm just going to set this to the side because it's not totally dry, so I cannot move on to the next part of this. So while this is drying, we'll just move on to something else. First, let me clean up. Y'all, if y'all don't have one of these cute little ladybug vacuum cleaners, you're totally missing out. And if you want to have a closer look at her, I'll put a link to her down below. She came from Amazon. Isn't she cute? Okay, so now I want to move on to our Beware signs. We're just going to cut the tag off first. Get rid of that. We don't need it. And I'm going to flip it over because we're not going to be using the front side. We're going to be using the back side. I'm going to take my same 80 grit sandpaper and I'm going to rough this back side up. So it's super important that this is clean. Okay, so now we're ready to put our contact paper on. And y'all, this contact paper did come from the Dollar Tree. Let's see which side I like better. I really do love this wood grain here. Honestly, I like all of it. Let me just see where it's going to fall. That'll still leave me this for another project. So I think I'm going to use this one. So I just want to measure out my piece. And I do want to leave some overhang. So I'm going to leave maybe an inch that I'm going to fold over. And I want an inch to go over the side as well. So I'm going to cut right about here. And you can measure, but honestly, it's easier to just use the grid that is on the back of your contact paper. Okay. So now we're just going to apply our contact paper to the back. And I'll be honest, y'all, this might be the hardest part, is getting your contact paper separated from the paper itself. Okay, so now we want to take and cut out a little corner. So when we fold this over, it won't fold over on itself. So you just want to corner where both of your corners meet. You just cut out that little chunk. Now, just as a precaution, I am going to take some clear packing tape and put over the seams because this contact paper is not the best at sticking. I just don't want this to go anywhere. Okay, now we will repeat the process for our other beware sign because this will be the other half of our box. Okay, I will go ahead, even though this is not dry, I'm going to go ahead and lay out my contact paper so I can start working on this piece. Now, one thing you want to be mindful of is which way your wood grain is going. The sides and the bottom I am going to have to fit flush, but the top, because it may show through our arrangement, I want it to be able to fold over. So just when you do your sides, make sure that your wood grain is going the right way. And you'll see what I'm talking about in just a second. Okay, so see the wood grain, it's going like this. We want to make sure that when we put it on our little box here, that it's going the same way. So as soon as this is dry, I'm going to attach this to my box, and then I'll fold over the edge, just like that. And then I'll secure it with tape too. And I've gone and done the other box ahead of time. So I didn't even worry about covering the sides because this is what we're going to glue to. Well, this sign is dry. I'm going to move on to our foam board piece. Now you could technically use another one of these signs if you wanted to, but I didn't want to waste one of my signs. So that's why I decided to use foam core for the bottom. But I did trace the sign onto my foam board to make sure that I had it the right height. But I needed to allow for the thickness of the sign. So I just took off that thickness, just like that. So your finished piece ends up being roughly 22 and a half by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 by 6. And I did go ahead and notch out this little corner because when we put our little harvest box together, it's going to set in just like that. Okay, so this is dry now, and let's get our contact paper on. Okay, now when you get to this part, we want to take our scissors and we want to cut a little notch right where the inside of this is just a little bit smaller. We just want to be able to fold that edge all the way down. Okay. If you have any excess on the edge here, just take your scissors and trim that off, or your X-Acto knife. This is all going to be covered up on the edge, so like I said, I'm not really worried about it. Okay. Now I'm just going to take my tape and put just a little piece down inside here so that this doesn't go anywhere. Okay. Now we will repeat the entire process for this piece on our other sign. And here I've got both of mine done. And these are going to be our end pieces. Okay, now we're going to get a little bit messy, y'all. So I'm just going to spread out my Winn-Dixie cell papers here because we're about to start painting. I'm going to start off first with my smaller pieces, and I'm going to be using some paper towels for this. Now you don't want these paper towels to be wet, you want them to be dry, and I'm going to be using 2 colors of paint here. The first one is the Apple Barrel multi-surface paint, and this is in the color Dark Granite. And the next color I'm going to be using is an Espresso Brown from Craft Mart. You can use both of multi-surface paints, but you at least need to have one color that is multi-surface because that's going to stick best to this contact paper. And y'all, I know I need to buy a new bottle of paint. My cat decided he wanted to eat it. Thank goodness I got it out of his mouth before he succeeded. So yeah, crazy cat. Okay, so let me show you what we're going to do here. I'm just going to put a drop of my dark granite right onto my surface here. I'm going to put the same amount of my Espresso Brown right onto the surface, and I'm going to take my paper towels, and y'all, it's time to get messy. Just gonna rub this in. If you get too much, it's totally fine because we have another box to do. But we just want to rub it until we get the shade that we want. You don't want to have your paint too thick though, because we want our wood grain to show through. And I did not mean to get this on the side here. It's not going to matter if I do, but I just didn't really want to. Doesn't that look rich? It's such a pretty color now. I know that Dollar Tree does have the contact paper that is darker, but mine never seems to have it. So that's why I decided to just make my own. But I love the hues of the dark gray. Isn't that pretty? So let's do a quick side-by-side shot here. Huge difference. And then we're going to do the same thing for this one. Okay, we're going to do the same thing for our beware signs, and then we're going to let that dry, and when we come back we'll start putting it all together. Okay, y'all, don't these look gorgeous? I mean, they seriously look like real wood. Like, I'm so impressed with this technique. Okay, so now we are ready to put everything together. I'm gonna lay my long pieces to the side for now. And to put this together, I'm gonna be using my Sure Bonder Tough Sticks today, and these are the full-size sticks. And y'all, if you have not tried these Tough Sticks yet, you are totally missing out, because these things will hold so strong. It's like a commercial type glue stick. Like, they are so good. When you want a sturdy bond, this is definitely what you want to use. And I'll put a link to these down below if you want to check those out. Okay, so I'm going to make sure before I start gluing everything together, I want to make sure that everything fits. Okay, that looks pretty good. So I'm only going to glue one of these down first, because I do have just a slight bit of adjusting to do. Okay, so now I'm just going to take my hot glue and I'm going to run along these edges, and I'm going to glue my sides on. Okay, y'all, she's looking super cute. Now, before I start putting my floral arrangement in here, I am going to take my hot glue gun and just reinforce these edges. Okay, what do you think? I think it's beautiful so far. Now, we do have our little edges here that we are going to add on, as well as the nail head trim. Okay, now for our corner pieces, we've got a couple of different options here. You can just use poster board, but I didn't want to have to paint mine, to be honest, so I decided to use one of these cookie sheets from the Dollar Tree. And y'all, I love this stuff. It cuts so easy, and it's already this silvery color, so that's one less thing I have to paint. So the size pieces that I'm going to be cutting are 2 by 6. We're going to need 4 of these, one for each corner. Okay, so I've got my 2 by 6 piece cut. Now, I have to warn you, you need to be super careful, because I don't want you cutting yourself on this. It is aluminum, and if you're not careful, you could cut yourself. So I don't like the way this is like bumpy looking, so I'm just going to take the end of my palette knife here. You can use anything. You could use a dowel or anything that you can use your scissors. You just want to get all those ridges out. And again, if you're not comfortable doing this, then you can always put on a pair of gardening gloves just for safety's sake. but I like living on the edge, so here we are. Now I'm gonna fold this in half because I want a nice crisp corner. And then I will repeat this for the other 3 sides. Okay, so now I'm gonna grab my thumbtacks and one of my little aluminum pieces here, and we're gonna start gluing this on. I'm gonna glue the very edge with just a light bead of my hot glue. Now I do have to warn you that this aluminum does get warm even if you're not touching it, so just be super careful. It's easier to start at the bottom and just work your way up. Okay, we've got our edge on. Now, I did have my edge just a little bit taller, and I did that on purpose because I want this to roll over just slightly. So I'll cut the edge and then just use my glue gun. And roll that top over. Okay, it's looking pretty cool. Okay, so now I want to add in my thumbtacks. Now, if you want to, you can take a piece of wire cutters and clip off the little thumbtack part, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to actually hammer this in. Now, it can be a little bit tricky to hammer in, so I start off with just pushing the thumbtack in as far as I can. Then I'm going to take my scissors and hold the thumbtack in place while I hammer. Okay, and that's it. And we'll repeat this same process for the 3 remaining sides. Now, you can leave your metal shiny like this if you want to, but because my inspiration piece is sort of antiqued and aged, I'm going to use my same apple barrel multi-surface paint in the color dark granite that we used to stain this with. And I'm just going to dirty this up a little bit. Okay, so I've got my gray down, and I want to have just a little bit more of an antique finish to it. So I'm going to go in with a little bit of matte black paint, and just in those dark areas where it would normally be dark, like around the nail heads and around the edge here. And I'm just going to kind of sprinkle in a little bit of black paint. And y'all, I know I'm a messy painter, but sometimes you just got to get your hands dirty. If you're not comfortable doing this with your fingers, you can definitely try a brush, but I like the way that it looks with your fingers. Alrighty, moving on to the next step. Okay, so let's start with our flowers. Now I've got one bunch of, and I've gone ahead and cut these apart just to save time, but I wanted to show you what we're going to be using today. And these are all flowers that I found at the Dollar Tree. I love them. It looks a lot like the ones from our inspiration piece, and there were 4 on this one stem. And I've also got 2 different kinds of leaves here. One of these looks like maple, and maybe the other ones are oak, it looks like. And honestly, these aren't bad like they are, but I want to get them more looking like the ones from the inspiration piece. So let me show you what I've got planned. And y'all, I just cut these apart using my husband's wire cutters, and it was super easy. Now, I'm not going to have to do anything to these, so I'm just actually going to lay these to the side. And look how I have transformed these leaves from this bright color into this really muted, almost chalk washed. And I've just got this sitting inside of a foam block here. So let me show you how we're going to do this. I'm just going to take one of my pizza pans here because I don't want to make a mess all over my mat, and I'm going to line it with a paper towel. And I'm just going to take one of my leaves here, and I've got some watered down Waverly chalk paint. Now, the Waverly chalk paint that I'm using is in the color Plaster, and honestly, this is probably like 1/3 paint and probably 2/3 of water. I mean, it's like super watery. I just want to give it a wash. Now, the little berries, I guess these are called, you don't want to put too much on there. You don't want to kind of mess with them too much because they will come off. So I'm just using like a little dabbing motion just to sort of tone that down just a little. And it's going to look just a little bit different whenever it dries. I am going to go ahead and put some paint on the stems because that's going to show. And let me show you how we do the leaves. So just load your brush up and literally just brush your paint onto your leaves. Now, I do like to flip it over and put a little bit on the back side too, just to sort of make sure that the back of the veins on the leaf get some color too. And look at the difference. Can you see that difference? Big difference. It just makes them look more muted, and honestly, I think they look more high-end like this. Another good thing about this is if your leaves are a little bit bent, then when they get wet, you can use your finger and sort of straighten them out a little bit. And when they dry, they're gonna dry straighter. If you wanna hurry this process along, you can also use a blow dryer set on a low temperature just to make it dry faster. Okay, I'm gonna do the same thing with the other bunch of our leaves. Now, I did use 2 bunches of each one. I used 1 bunch of this white flower. Now, I also picked up some of these berries. These berries did come from the Dollar Tree, and they have a couple of different colors, but honestly, none of them were the colors that I needed. So I just used my custom mix orange paint here, and this is just mostly orange acrylic paint with 1 drop of red and 1 drop of brown. This is the paint color that I've used on several of my fall projects so far this year. So I gave each one of these berries a coat of paint, and I've got some that are orange, and then I also decided, because my inspiration piece looks like they have some that are blue, so I went ahead and painted some of these, this really pretty color from folk art called Minted Aqua. So I just wanted to show you what it looks like before it's painted. And then this is the orange color that it's after I painted it. And now I'm just going to use that same whitewashing technique and do the same thing for this one. And I will go back and paint this one with my orange color. And once this dries, It's going to have that powdery look to it. Now I did use 2 coats of my whitewash on these berries, and I'll do the same thing with these, but I just wanted you to see what the difference was. So this is unpainted. This is 1 coat of my orange color with 1 coat of my whitewash, and this is my orange color with 2 coats of whitewash. So it's totally up to you. And then this is the Minted Aqua painted, and then this is the Minted Aqua painted with the whitewash on it. Now, one final thing that we need to paint is our green pumpkin and also our orange pumpkin. And this, I guess it's orange. These are kind of like metallic looking. And if you'll recall, this is what the green one looked like before I did the antiquing to it. So let me show you how easy this was to do. So I'm just going to take my Waverly chalk paint that is not watered down. And I'll be honest, I'm just going to use this same paintbrush. I'm going to dip my paintbrush into my Waverly chalk paint, and I'm just going to highlight the little grooves here first. And I know it looks a little crazy and you're probably like, oh my goodness, you are ruining that poor pumpkin, but just trust me. Okay, now I'm gonna completely let this dry before I move on to the next step. But this does dry pretty quick. Okay, so this is dry now, and I'm gonna take some of my Waverly chalk paint, and I just want a little bit of this chalk paint on my paper towel here, and I'm gonna dip it into my whitewash. And I know, y'all, it looks just a little bit nuts right now. So I'm just dabbing it on and washing some of it off. I still want my orange or my copper bronze color to show through, but I want the majority of it to be whitewashed. Isn't that pretty? So again, I'm just going to take a little bit of my paint on my paper towel, not much, and then I'll water some of it down. You still want it to have just a little bit more than that watered down look to it, just so that it sticks a little bit better. I'll pat it on at first, and then I'll start rubbing. Okay, now once this dries, I will go back and do the rest of this, but y'all, this is pretty much it. I did the green one the same way, and this is what it looks like when it's dried. It does look just a little bit different than it does when it's wet. Okay, so we'll let all of our pieces dry, and we'll come back and we're ready to assemble. Okay, so I'm just going to take a leftover pool noodle that I had in my stash that honestly I was going to use for a project, and it didn't quite work out like I had hoped. And I'm going to use that to fill up some of the space in the bottom of my box. And I did go ahead and cut my glue gun down on low so my foam would not melt. And I'll just hold this down until it cools off a little bit. Okay, so now I want to take my dry foam here. And normally I like to use the rigid foam, but these flowers are not very heavy. So I think it'll be okay to use this. This box is so sturdy, y'all. It's so much bigger than I pictured it would be too. So I'm honestly probably going to have to use some flowers that I had in my stash to fill it up because it is quite large. All right. Now that we've got that out of the way, we can start playing and having fun. So I want to add in my dahlias first. I finally figured out what the name of this was. And I did go ahead and paint the flower little leaves that were on this one with that same whitewashed look. So I'm going to start in the center and just sort of, let me turn it around this way so you can see it. I'm going to start with the flower that is in the center. I know this is going to be a little bit hard to see, so I'm just going to do my best. Then I'll add in a couple of other ones on the side. And there was 5 of these dahlias in the package, or in the bunch, I guess. And then I'll face the other 2 to the back. It could be the front or the back, either one. Okay, so now here's our green pumpkin, and there's our orange one. And they turned out so, so pretty. I just love that whitewashed look. And I just took a skewer and stuck these through the bottom. I honestly didn't even have to put any hot glue or anything on them. They just stuck just like they were. Okay. Now I'm just going to start laying in the leaves. And before I get too crazy, I'm going to go ahead and add in my onion grass. And y'all, let me show you what I like to do with the onion grass. I'll just take a few blades and take my fingernail and just sort of pull that back, and that makes it have a nice little curl to it. I don't like to do all of them, I just like to do some of them, just so that it has some movement. And we'll do the same thing with the other side. Okay, then I'm going to add in these little white leaves just as some filler. I think the way the berries on the inspiration piece are, there's one orange one and one blue one on a stem. So I'm just going to swap some of these really quick. I really like these little berries too. I know they're not in our inspiration piece, but I just think they're pretty. So I'm going to stick them down in here. Okay, now my little berries here are not quite long enough, so I'm just going to take some of these leftover stems that I cut off from before and add those in to make them a little bit taller. And I'll just wire it all together with my floral tape. Okay, y'all, let's go put it on our shelf and see what it looks like. Y'all, I absolutely love how my arrangement turned out. So the one from Pottery Barn was $161. And y'all, I've got less than 20 in mine, and I think it looks just as good. What do you think? Did I nail it or did I fail it? That does it for today's video, y'all. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a big thumbs up because that would mean the world to me. And don't forget to let me know down in the comments below if you think I nailed it or failed it. I'll be totally honest, I think I nailed it because the one from Pottery Barn just looked a little bit spare to me. Kind of looked like it needed a few more fillers, and I added in the Spanish moss at the end, just around the edges, and I think that totally helped bring it over the top. So not to toot my own horn, but I think I totally nailed it. But let me know your opinion down in the comments below. Also, don't forget to check out everybody else in our collaboration playlist. Their videos are going to be absolutely awesome, and I cannot wait to watch them all. Now, if you don't want to miss any of the DIYs in the playlist, make sure you hit loop, and that way they're just going to continuously play one right after the other. Until next time, happy DIYing, y'all.